Great. So let's make a start then. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'd firstly like to thank Westminster for inviting us to present to this seminar. It is greatly appreciated, and we look forward and we hope that you will find what we're about to present very interesting. So this seminar will discuss some of the various projects we work on here at Cross River Partnership, and some of the work that we do here within the City of Westminster and also across London. All these projects help to address the climate emergency that we currently face, and will hopefully help us deliver on our target of becoming a net zero local authority by 2030. So my name is Thomas Joyce. I work here at Cross River Partnership, and as I've said, over the next hour or so, we'll walk you through the different programs and projects we work on, as you can get a sense and a good idea of what we do and how we work to help Westminster address this issue. So just some housekeeping before we start, just in case some of you missed what Hayley previously mentioned just before we started. So this session is being recorded, and we would like to ask everyone to just mute themselves and also switch your cameras off. I can't see that anyone's got their cameras on, but just in case you do, just for the length of this session, to make sure that we can have a smooth experience throughout. So obviously this is a live event, and we do hope that there'll be no tech issues along the way. But if you do encounter one, then do get in contact with Ben at IT. Ben Woolen, his email address has been put into the chat by Hayley. Do get in contact with him and he'll hopefully be able to get you back up and running. So let's just then have a look at today's speakers. So we'll be joined by many colleagues at CRP across River Partnership, all of whom are experts in the realm of sustainability and sustainable transport. So we'll be joined by Susanna Wilkes, who is Director here at Cross River Partnership, Kate Fenton, Project Manager here at CRP, Safina Ataru, also Project Manager here, Fiona Cool, Project Manager here, and then also myself. I'll be chairing this seminar, and we'll also be joined by Star Friedman, who will be moderating the chat facility to your right. I'm sure that you're all very familiar with Teams, as we've been using them for the past few months anyway. But yes, do pop your questions in there and I'll get back to that in just a moment. So during today's seminar, we'll be provide you with a brief introduction to Cross River Partnership, for those of you who may not be familiar with us. In addition to providing you some context to the projects we work on, and also some of the work we have also helped deliver within Westminster previously. We'll then move over to Kate Fenton, who is managing our Clean Air Villages 3 programme, which is DEFRA funded. And Kate will walk us through some of the different initiatives they're putting in place then to help businesses, not only in Westminster, but also across London. And there's a good opportunity there for lessons of best practice to be transferred between different areas. We'll then look to Safina Ataru, who will be talking about our Clean Air Route Finder. So this is an application that can be used for everyone in their day-to-day lives to get around London more safely. And then we're last, but by no means least, we'll be joined by Fiona Cool, who will be walking us through the Healthy Streets Every Day programme, which aims to make pedestrian priority streets across not only Westminster, but also London, to help us live, work and play better and in a nicer environment. So as I've mentioned, there will be an opportunity for you to have your say via Q&A session. So we'll go through all the presentations first, and then we'll have about a 15-minute question answer session for you all. If you do have any questions, pop them in the chat. So you won't need to put your raise a hand function that's at the bottom of your screens. We'll filter through them all and we'll make sure that we get them answered. If for any reason we aren't able to answer them due to any time constraints or anything, our contact details will be displayed at the end of this seminar, and we'll be able to get back to you with an answer with any questions that we might not be able to get back to you today on. So perfect. So let's then look to make a start, and I'd like to pass everyone over to Susanna Wilkes, Director of Cross River Partnership. Over to you, Susanna.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Thomas. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us to learn about Cross River Partnership. You might not recognise me. I'm not looking as tip-top as my normal photograph, but it's definitely still me. So we're really pleased to be talking about the ways that we work with Westminster City Council and other partner organisations to keep our air clean as we support a green recovery from COVID. So as some of you know, Cross River Partnership was formed 26 years ago now to build the Millennium Bridge and the Golden Jubilee footbridges across the River Thames. By now, we're actively helping with delivering London's future together with all sorts of government, business and community partners. From our original 4 local authority partner organisations, CRP has grown and we now work with 10 central London local authorities, as well as 18 business improvement districts that are dotted across those boroughs, including Marble Arch, Northbank, Paddington and Victoria. CRP also does work beyond the central London sub-region. Our Healthy Streets Everyday programme is supporting 17 of London's boroughs. You'll hear more about that later. Westminster has been CRP's accountable body since the partnership's inception because we don't have any legal status ourselves. We are a true voluntary association of our partners. So CRP does follow all of Westminster City Council's audit, finance, procurement and legal processes, just like any other Westminster City Council team. CRP's vision is to empower people to deliver innovative projects that support places to survive and thrive. While none of us would have chosen for the COVID crisis to occur, it has provided all of us with an impetus for bold and urgent action. A truly green recovery from COVID is within our reach. It's all a question of balance. With the right physical distancing interventions, with meticulous guidance and regulations, and with intelligent and ongoing air quality monitoring, we can work together to create a different future. CRP is working as hard as it can to bring as much information and best practice to partners as possible. Our website hosts a dedicated COVID response page, as well as a plethora of useful publications, toolkits, videos, articles, and more. We publish a fortnightly e-newsletter, which you're very welcome to sign up to by clicking on the link displayed in the chat right now. So CRP's current project portfolio is truly wide-ranging. You'll hear more about some of these projects shortly. All of these projects are externally funded. CRP also undertakes specific consultancy style commissions, as exemplified by this first of its kind, area-based freight delivery and servicing action plan that we co-produced with the West End Partnership all the way back in 2018. This plan is now being revisited with a view to redesigning the West End coming out of COVID. CRP was also very pleased to programme manage delivery of the first low emission neighbourhood in Marylebone on behalf of Westminster City Council. Many of the lessons learnt there have since been rolled out across other London boroughs, for example, the diesel parking surcharge. I would now like to hand over to my CRP colleague Kate Fenton, and she'll tell you more about the Clean Air Villages project that she's managing. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna, and good afternoon, everybody. So, yeah, as Susanna said, I'm going to tell you about the Clean Air Villages project and various initiatives with a sort of Westminster context before telling you about some of the other things we do on the project. So, Clean Air Villages is a one-year DEFRA-funded air quality project, and we're very pleased to have been successful in being awarded this grant for a third year in a row. I thought it would be helpful to start with a bit of historical context to tell you about CAV1, or CAV1 and CAV2. We call it CAV. It's all about the acronym. So Clean Air Villages 1 was with 5 local authorities, and we worked across pollution hotspots. So we call them villages because they are air quality focus areas, and they've been identified by the GLA as areas of high footfall but also high pollution. So we work within these areas, and the aim is to work with businesses to reduce congestion and pollution from business deliveries. We also offer one-to-one guidance, and the aim is within each of these villages to come up with one local and tailored solution. So for the second year of the project, we then worked with 7 local authorities and 2 private sector companies. So we expanded our reach and continued the work that we were doing. So I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about what we did as part of CAV2 last year in the Westminster area. So the air quality focus area was Covent Garden and the Strand, which if some of you may know who were in the Strand office previously before we moved, it's highly polluted and highly congested. So what we did was we worked with the West End Partnership and various other stakeholders in the area, the landowners and the Northbank bid, to work with their members and tenants. So CRP did extensive survey work working with the food and beverage sector. And through this, we explored a number of solutions, one to do with consolidation, another to do with buying communities, and another to come up with a preferred supplier list. What we actually went on to decide to do was come up with consolidation of deliveries from New Covent Garden Market. For those that don't know, New Covent Garden Market is actually based just over the river in Battersea. And the idea of this was to do 1, a consolidation, but 2, do it using zero and low emission vehicles to reduce congestion in the West End and to reduce pollution. Unfortunately, as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic happened in March and we were just ready to launch then. So what we actually did was we paused this trial, but I'm going to revisit that shortly. So moving on to the present day, which is Clean Air Villages 3. So again, it's DEFRA funded, 1-year project, and we've now grown. So we are working in 16 villages with 16 partners. And thank you very much to Westminster City Council, who are the lead authority for this. So there are 12 local authorities involved this year and 4 business improvement districts. And we have also expanded the remit of the project itself to go beyond working with businesses. So we're also working with communities and hospitals. So just to show you here a little bit more detail. So we're carrying on the work that we did in CAV1 and CAV2 with businesses, but we're also working with communities and hospitals. And communities are defined as anyone who works or visits or lives in that area. And if I go on to another slide, you will see that many of the partners wanted to stick with the business strand, which was absolutely fine. Some chose communities, one chose hospitals, but some have chosen a hybrid, which was businesses and communities. So we've offered quite a lot of flexibility within this in terms of the scope of our activities. So I thought it would now be helpful to explore the CAV3 activities that are quite local to Westminster. So the Clean Air Village for Westminster for CAV3 this year is actually Soho. And when meeting with Westminster and West End Partnership, we discussed various ideas around micro consolidation, cargo bike deliveries, click and collect, last mile services, all kinds of things. And we also discussed the New Covent Garden Market consolidation trial that we had got up to almost delivering in March. So because in Q1 everyone has kind of been in lockdown, so we've not been able to do the New Covent Garden Market trial, but now we've been having discussions about actually giving this a go as restaurants and businesses have been emerging and as suppliers are increasing their capacity and resource. So it's a question of watch this space, but we're really excited to be doing this trial. And the idea is to work out the feasibility of whether it's financially viable to do such a scheme in the long term. And we will certainly share and do case studies about that in the future. So one of the other partners for CAV3 is the Fitzrovia Partnership. And so we're working in their bid area and we are going to be encouraging uptake of some of their preferred supplier schemes, which in their case is to do with waste and also office supplies. And the aim of that will be to reduce vehicle movements in that area, which is better for business and better for everyone. So the third partner that's relevant for Westminster for CAV3 is the Northbank bid. And we have had various discussions with the bid about cargo bike schemes, about retiming, active travel, click and collect, etc. But what we're actually now doing is we're going to hone in on a specific area of the bid. So it might be Villiers Street, for example, which is in between Embankment and Charing Cross. And we might do some work around retiming for businesses to coordinate that. Or additionally, we may work in the Aldwych end of the bid, where there's going to be some extensive work around pedestrianisation, so we can support businesses around all things to do with air quality during that time. So as they say, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So we just wanted to share with you some photos from CAV2 to get an idea of the work that we do. And all of the solutions and learning that we gain from Clean Air Villages, we do disseminate in various ways. The idea, obviously, is to expand and support all kinds of activities to do with zero and low emission vehicles. And we want to educate and raise the profile of air quality as an issue. So this is our CRP Clean Air Villages directory, which is a free online resource which you can all go and take a look at. It's a list of businesses and suppliers who all commit to delivering within our village areas by foot or by zero or ultra low emission vehicle, which includes, as you can see, electric vehicles, alternative fuel vehicles, bikes, cargo bikes, and also hybrid petrol vehicles. Yeah, if you want to get champagne delivered to your home by bike, you can do that. Bread, fish, all sorts. And I would encourage you to think about the impact of the journeys that are being made at the point at which you place an order. And as a consumer, your decisions can make a difference. So we have, as part of Clean Air Villages 3, expanded this tool and resource so that each of the villages has its own dedicated and locally tailored page. We will share the link. Oh, staff has shared the link already. So we also produce lots of case studies as part of the project, and we use these when we go out and do our business engagement, and they're ways of sharing best practice, and we use them as a way of encouraging businesses to follow suit. So for last year, we produced 9 business case studies and then also 5 in-depth best practice case studies. I thought it might be helpful today to highlight one that was of a little business in Soho. So on the bottom row, third from the right, the one that says consolidate eco products and deliver last mile on foot. That's actually a little business called Hospitality Source. They're based in Soho and they deliver concentrated cleaning products to businesses. And they do this all by foot. Obviously, they get their delivery into the West End in the first place. But they only get deliveries once a week. And what that does is it actually supports a storage space issue, which a lot of businesses in the West End face, which means that they have to order more frequently, which is worse for congestion. It reduces the number of deliveries, and it also reduces the costs for the business. There's also less waste that is a result of that as well. There's a number of other case studies. You can take a look at them on our website. So additionally, we have produced more in-depth case studies, like I said. So, for example, the one on the left-hand side, which says electric van scheme. So in Brixton, we actually were able to implement a shared electric van scheme, which was a way of encouraging behaviour change around not only using electric vehicles, but about using a shared vehicle scheme as well. And that's actually at the moment available and free for businesses to use. And so we wanted to create a case study or a toolkit that would be helpful for local authorities, for bids, for community business groups, by way of if they wanted to replicate or do something similar, that there would be all of the information within that for them. And we've done various other in-depth case studies about electric vehicle charging and about cargo bike schemes that we have set up by way of supporting and providing a legacy as well from Clean Air Villages to continue into the future. So thank you very much. That's all from me. And I'm now going to hand over to Safina Tutaru.
Hello, everyone. I'm Safinat, and I'll be talking to you about the Clean Air Route Finder. Okay, so the Clean Air Route Finder is a tool for finding low pollution routes around the city. But first of all, a bit of an intro. We live in a busy city with lots of people, lots of vehicles moving us and the goods and the services that we need around the city. The problem is that in addition to creating noise and traffic, these vehicles are also responsible for about half of our city's dangerous levels of air pollution. More than 2 million of us live in parts of London that exceed air pollution limits, and exposure to poor air quality is associated with both poor health and premature death. When most of us when most of us worked at Westminster City Hall, we saw how congested Victoria Road could get. And while it's nowhere near the levels pre-COVID-19, most of us are cycling and walking to get around now. And it helps that London boroughs are working to make it easier for us to do so by creating more space. Recent research from Imperial College shows that physical and mental upsides of physical activity outweigh the risks of poor air quality. However, the Clean Air Route Finder is, as I mentioned, there to help us find less polluted routes and map out a more pleasant journey. The tool provides us with options for getting where we want, whether we're walking or whether we're cycling. So, next slide. So using the Clean Air Route Finder is really easy, either on your computer or on your mobile device if you're out and about. Go to cleanairroutes.london, enter your starting point and your end point, and then whether or not you're walking or cycling. And up to 3 routes will be generated. The routes are graded green, yellow, and red, and that's just based on the average amount of exposure that you face over the entire route. Thomas, a quick question: will we be able to play the video?
So unfortunately, my laptop won't allow me to share the sound, so the video isn't going to be able to be played. That's
fine. So we had hoped to show you a video comparing a regularly traveled route with a clean air route. And that video in particular goes from St. Pancras to Euston Station. However, we'll go ahead and pop the link to the video in the chat. It's on YouTube. And yeah, watch it at your leisure. Basically, these routes are along quieter paths or roads. So in addition to the low exposure, it is also a great way to discover hidden gems in your neighborhood, whether it is a small park or perhaps public art that one wouldn't necessarily be aware of when they travel their usual route. Sorry, keep losing control of the presentation. Okay, all right, great. So in this screenshot here, what we have is a route, or rather routes generated going from City Hall up to Paddington Station by bike. As I mentioned, typically the routes that are the suggested route, it tends to be along a quieter space. In this case, you can see that the green route takes you through a bit more space through Hyde Park, and it only tags on 3 minutes compared to the most efficient route that's available for getting to the station. By the way, the national legal limit for nitrogen dioxide is 40 micrograms per cubic meter. And for those of you who are having a hard time trying to imagine exactly how much that is, that would be about the size of a football in a space that is 3 times the size of Wembley Stadium. So it doesn't take that much exposure for it to be dangerous to us. In Westminster, along Victoria Street, the average annual amount exceeds 55 micrograms, as opposed to the 14 micrograms that is the limit. So yeah, basically, it's a hotspot within Westminster. So, nevertheless, despite the volume of traffic in London, moving around on foot or bicycle is feasible and it can be pleasant, especially within zones 1 and 2. At CRP, we produced the walking tube report, and that basically explores walking between tube stations. Not all stations are operational yet. Quite a few of them were closed during the lockdown. But as they reopen, we can spend less time on the tube by getting off a few stops before your final destination and walking the rest of the way. We've also updated the Clean Air Route Finder to show you a few routes between key stations, but you can use the tool to find other ways. Sorry, to find your way between other stations. Other updates include showing the cycle times to and from Central London termini, including Victoria Station. We found that you can get quite far in a short period on bicycles, so we've limited the times to 2 minutes and 5 minutes. And hopefully that's useful for those of you who use National Rail to come into London and want to gauge whether or not to cycle the rest of your journey. And CARF also shows, or rather the Clean Air Route Finder now shows TfL cycleways. We're exploring other ways to make the tool useful. One of the upcoming changes will include breaking down your exposure along each of the routes. So rather than just seeing a large green stretch or a large yellow stretch or red stretch, you see exactly how much you'll be exposed to along whichever path you choose. And that's really the Clean Air Route Finder. So to summarize, one upside of the pandemic, I guess we could think of it as an upside, is that we are now walking and cycling more to get around the city. The Clean Air Route Finder is there to help us navigate as well as identify low pollution routes that could get us where we want. And it all ties in really well with Westminster's Health and Wellbeing Hub, which allows us which provides us with resources to stay healthy. I encourage you to visit the page. It's available from SharePoint, but we'll also stick the link in the chat. And that's it from me. Thank you very much. I'll now pass it on to Fiona Cole, and she'll be talking to you about healthy streets every day.
Brilliant. Thank you, Safinat. So I just wanted to start by sort of saying how over the last decade, our views on the street have been slowly shifting. Streets are no longer being considered solely as a means of transport, but as places that people can use and enjoy. COVID-19 has emphasised this, changing the way that we think about space, travel, health and the environment. London, as we know, is no exception, with TfL's Streetscape programme being implemented at an unprecedented scale to provide safe, spacious streets that encourage active travel and reduce viral transmission. In fact, the crisis has emphasised the critical lifeline that our streets and open spaces play for cities and their residents, providing free places for play, exercise, connection to nature, as well as acting as facilitators for social interaction and boosting the local economy. It has reinforced that our streets need to become places for people, providing space not just for pedestrians and cyclists, but also for leisure and social interaction. So how do we do this? Well, the Healthy Streets approach is a global policy framework that puts people and their health at the centre of decisions about how we design, manage and use public spaces. It aims to make streets healthy, safe and welcoming for everyone by prioritising people and their needs. Underpinning the Healthy Streets approach are 10 Healthy Street indicators that are used to create healthy streets. These are pedestrians from all walks of life, easy to cross, shade and shelter, places to stop and rest, not too noisy, people choose to walk, cycle and use public transport, people are safe, things to see and do, people feel relaxed and providing clean air. So what does this look like in practice? Well, CRP's Healthy Streets Every Day is a Mayor's Air Quality funded project to empower boroughs, businesses and communities across London to deliver people priority healthy streets, increase cycling and walking rates, and reduce emissions and exposure to toxic air. The programme works with 17 borough partners, including Westminster, as well as landowners and business improvement districts, such as the Northbank bid. As part of the programme, we help our partners to deliver on 3 key work streams. These you can see on screen, in order to help improve local air quality, make active travel safer and easier, and provide more space on our streets for people. I'll be going into more detail on some of these work streams and the interventions associated with them on the next few slides. So, one of the streetscape improvements that the Healthy Streets Everyday programme is helping partners to deliver are parklets. At its simplest level, parklets are a temporary pavement extension that sit in existing parking bays, and they provide social, economic and environmental benefits. For example, a well-designed and coordinated parklet not only provides additional green open space for people to use, but it can also promote active travel, stimulate economic growth and encourage community engagement. 4 of our HSE partners are currently looking at implementing these, including the City of Westminster and the Northbank bid, who are looking to implement a parklet on Drury Lane. Additionally, we have CRP and the Healthy Streets Everyday programme have produced a guidance document that was published as part of the programme, which aims to help partners to implement more of these initiatives across the city. And it focuses on how to design and work with stakeholders to implement a successful parklet. Similarly, as part of our traffic regulations work stream, we are helping partners to implement initiatives such as school streets. A school street is a temporary traffic restriction placed on a road outside of a school that occurs during drop-off and pick-up times. The restriction applies to both school traffic and any through traffic, helping to prevent rat running and congestion, and creating a safer, healthier and more pleasant environment that encourages sustainable travel to school. 10 of our partners are implementing school streets as part of the programme, and I'm aware that Westminster has worked with 10 schools to implement these initiatives. Additionally, our School Streets hotline service continues to be well used and has now been extended to the end of September. The service is available to all London boroughs, including Westminster, so if you do want to have any queries or questions on implementing school streets, please do contact me and I will let you know how to access the service. It provides users with tailored one-to-one support, as well as up-to-the-minute site-specific advice from the London Borough of Hackney, who is a Healthy Streets Everyday partner who has years of direct, on-the-ground experience in implementing school streets. The service is also in alignment with advice provided by TfL and can be used in relation to both individual school streets and wider school streets programmes. As part of the programme, we're also helping partners to implement car-free initiatives such as play streets and car-free events. For example, the programme is helping partners to implement over 30 play and school streets, improving local air quality and reducing exposure to pollution for children, who are one of the most vulnerable groups. Similarly, we are helping to deliver car-free events associated with both Clean Air Day and Car-Free Day. For example, last year, our partners delivered over 300 activities as part of Car Free Day 2019, and early planning, a strong PR campaign, resident and business incentives, and a focus on community engagement all contributed to the success of the day, with residents and visitors reporting that they felt happier on Car Free Day, with businesses also reporting greater footfall to their shops and market stalls. So, as well as the 3 partner work streams, Healthy Streets Everyday is also helping to implement the Healthy Streets approach through guidance and communication. For example, the programme continues to provide guidance, case studies and workshops on a range of topics, including parklets, school streets and car-free events. Similarly, we are also providing communications on Healthy Streets news and initiatives. For example, we are currently in the process of finalising our Healthy Streets Everyday webpage, where our partners and the wider public will be able to see what initiatives are occurring in association with the programme and where they're being implemented, as well as access to guidance and news. Additionally, CRP's programme of live shares discusses topics relating to Healthy Streets, and our next session Ditch Diesel, your electric vehicle options explained is occurring this Thursday. Additionally, our programme is funding a behaviour change study to assess the impact of initiatives implemented as part of the programme. We have a PhD studentship, which is running in tandem with the Healthy Streets Everyday programme, that is helping us to understand more about how long initiatives need to be in place before behaviour change becomes ingrained within people. And it will also provide a data set, a baseline data set, with the aim to incentivise policy change through positive messaging. So finally, the Healthy Streets approach and CRP's HSE programme is extremely well aligned to TfL's Streetspace programme and London's COVID response. As a result, we're proactively helping our partners to make lasting and transformative change to streets throughout London, as per the work streams, guidance and monitoring I've described. For example, we are helping partners to make streetscape improvements such as pavement widening to aid social distancing, implementing low traffic neighbourhoods to encourage active travel, and to install modal filters to create more safe space for people. We are also helping partners to monitor these initiatives, providing a tailored monitoring solution to assess the impact of their COVID-19 initiatives, identify strengths and weaknesses, and to provide a proof of concept for more permanent change through data and robust guidance. So consequently, the importance of creating streets that are pleasant, safe spaces for all Londoners to enjoy has become more important than ever. And CRP's Healthy Streets Every Day aims to work with partners, businesses and communities to incorporate Healthy Streets initiatives as part of streets across London. This will not only help to improve our economy, well-being and the environment, but it will also improve our resilience, ensuring a shift towards streets for all people to safely work, live and play. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Fiona, and thank you to all speakers. I'd just like to invite the speakers back then for a Q&A session. So I don't know whether you could all pop your microphones on and your cameras. That would be great. And yeah, so thanks for all the really interesting presentations. I think let's start with a few questions because I can see a few people have asked questions in the chat. I know that Susanna and staff have briefly answered some of them, but maybe Kate, if we start with you, would you just be able to give a definition of micro consolidation and then also briefly then let us know how easy it is for a business or a business improvement district to work towards consolidating their deliveries? What needs to be done for this?
Sure. Yes. Thanks, Thomas. So I think first of all, it's probably important to make the distinction between consolidating deliveries through, for example, a preferred supplier list, where you might have a number of businesses on a street that use all the same waste provider, and the other kind of consolidation, which is a consolidation centre, where you might have a central consolidation hub outside of a city centre where all of the main deliveries go, and then the onward deliveries are all put onto one vehicle and taken in to reduce the number of journeys into that area. And then a micro consolidation centre is effectively one that would actually be in a city centre, but it would be much smaller scale. So it could just be for one street and you'd need some storage space for that. And you could even the onward journeys from that point can be by zero ultra low emission, and it could even be by a porterage scheme, so it could be based on foot. And sorry, you were saying also the question about how easy it would be for businesses to set these up. I think that an actual consolidation centre space requires actual space and funding behind that, which can be the biggest hurdle really to overcome, and that's quite difficult. So if you have a business improvement district in the area or the backing and support of the community, then that's a helpful start. If we're talking about consolidating deliveries by things like preferred supplier lists, that's actually a lot easier to do, and a lot of bids already are doing that. The easiest things are things like waste and office supplies, and you don't have to force any business to get involved in those. There are often benefits for joining those things, like reduced costs and things like that. Hopefully that helps.
Perfect. Thanks, Kate. And I can see that Barbara has just put into the chat, so thanks, Barbara. Are you monitoring the air quality improvements of the measures that are being put in place for, I don't know, looking at some of the cab interventions? What kind of monitoring work is underway for that?
Well, the answer is yes. We actually have a tool called Measure Best, which we use to calculate emission savings. So say, for example, we know that a business is currently using a diesel van, and through the project, they end up switching to a zero emission. We can actually work out some calculations over a time period of the emission savings that have resulted from that. And we will extrapolate lots of data for that as part of Clean Air Villages. But additionally, for Clean Air Villages 3, we're also looking at air quality monitoring from the perspective of coming up with some clean air walking routes for our specific villages this year. And we will use monitoring data to produce those.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kate. We may come back to you in a minute, but we'll head over then to Fiona, because I think there's a good question been asked by Dean in the chat. Around the competitive tendering for parklets. Is this something you're aware of, Fiona?
So I'm not aware specifically of competitive tendering. However, with your statement in terms of blocking access to utility covers, etc., I think it depends really on the supplier you go to. So, for example, we've released in our guidance very specific advice that says, you have to be very aware of where you locate a parklet. And I know that, for example, Meristem, that's been used by the Mayor of London, is extremely aware of that. They're a parklet designer and can implement parklets. So dependent on who you go to, that should be taken into consideration, but hopefully our guidance will help in terms of, I'm aware that with budget restrictions at the moment, it may be that some providers potentially aren't necessarily as prominent as Meristem, might be cheaper. And so I think, yes, it needs to be very careful with who you go to in terms of the parklet providers.
Perfect. Thank you, Fiona. Maybe sticking on the parklet stream then. In this current kind of climate of social distancing and all these other things that we have to adhere to, and if parklets are being put in place, with who does kind of that responsibility lie to ensure the safety of the general public is maintained when they're using that? And are parklets being adapted in any way to kind of accommodate for this?
Yep, so I think the responsibility does lie in part with the designers of the parklets. For example, we need to ensure that there's enough space for people to physically distance when they are using parklets, and that's down really to the design of a parklet. However, there is also that element of personal responsibility in terms of parklet users. With regards to parklets being designed and adapted to enable physical distancing, etc., I know that some providers such as Meristem actually have got options where you can install things like perspex screening to add additional kind of barriers and screening between seating areas to prevent transmission. You can also incorporate social distancing signage. And also in terms of the maintenance and kind of cleaning schedules of parklets, that's something that local authorities or businesses who own or potentially are in charge of the maintenance of parklets can actually start to make sure that they're cleaning them regularly to ensure that there's less viral transmission or likelihood of viral transmission, I should say.
Perfect. Thanks, Fiona. I can see that a few more questions have been asked in the chat, so we may come back to you again, Fiona. But let's then, if I could invite Susanna, because I can see that, yes, you've briefly answered the question regarding from Adam on the European cities and lessons of best practice. If we look at Natalie's comment, are you aware, or kind of would you be able to elaborate then on some of the work that we're doing in some of the more deprived areas of Westminster? Is there any work that we could, is there, again, looking at lessons of best practice that we can learn from other areas that we work in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're always trying to make available our lessons learned and materials to all areas of London to benefit from. I know that in the past we've certainly done work on the Church Street ward, including with the Baker Street Partnership Business Improvement District, in terms of trying to set up more community business interfaces and relationships there for mutual benefit. So we'd be really happy to see how some of the initiatives that we're delivering in other parts of Westminster, particularly around behaviour change and personal impacts on issues like air pollution could be rolled out in the Church Street area as well, including via community champions. So we can certainly follow up on that with you.
Definitely. Thanks, Susanna. And just sticking with you then, again, Barbara has just popped into the chat around the government providing funds for the improvement of energy efficiency, to improve the energy efficiency of properties. Is CRP, do we have any guidance or support for this? And also maybe in addition to that, would you be able to kind of elaborate on some of the, I know you touched on it in your presentation, but some of the support that we have available for businesses as well during these challenging times too? Maybe you could two in one question for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll probably bring in my CRP colleague Safinat as well, because she has been advising various landowners across London on their property owning portfolios in terms of advising them on their own sustainability strategies, sometimes looking as far ahead as 30 years in how they can manage their whole estates in a holistic basis to become more sustainable and to reduce their carbon emissions. And this has included the energy efficiency of buildings. In terms of how CRP is helping businesses, we have set up the COVID response page on our website, which has been highlighted in the chat. And we're updating that on a pretty much daily basis with tools, resources, application forms, anything else that we find that can be of use to businesses. We're aware that many of them are needing to diversify very quickly, particularly the independent businesses, and many of them are needing a little bit of extra help to digitize their activities rather than relying purely on the physical premises offer that they would have used solely in the past. So Safina, I don't know whether there's anything you wanted to add on the building's efficiency point.
Sure. So while we don't necessarily work with individuals in terms of improving the efficiency of their homes, we do work with those of our partners, such as landowners, who want to improve the general efficiency of their buildings. And due to the climate emergency that was declared late last year, basically a lot of them are looking at how to reduce the emissions from their buildings, and it is a very comprehensive approach that they're taking that involves understanding how much emissions they're putting out now, understanding the actions that are going on that create those emissions, and then understanding how to gradually reduce it over the next 10 to 30 years. So we've offered advice. We've offered advice to those partners in that way, but in terms of working with individuals, we can't do that, as we tend to work with our partners on what they would like to work on. I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thanks, Safina. If we maybe stick with you then, Safina, for this next question. So I saw that a question in the chat did pop up around where the generated data comes for the Clean Air Route Finder, and how that helps determine the routes. Would you be able to maybe elaborate on that slightly in terms of where the data comes from and how often it's updated?
All right, so basically the data, well, the Clean Air Route Finder itself more or less sits on top of Google Maps, but in terms of calculating the routes, that data comes from the London Air Quality Network, which is basically a network of air quality monitors around the city, and then that data is taken and it's used really to calculate sort of the annual average across particular routes. And regular users of Clean Air Route Finder will see that from day to day, the routes that are generated can change, and that's because in doing the calculations, other factors such as the weather, temperature, and road closures, various things that would affect the amount of that would affect the amount of emissions and how much of it we're exposed to. For example, on a hot, dry day, where we're going to be exposed to more than, say, on a wet, rainy day. But basically, it varies. So the calculations themselves do take all of these factors into account, and that's how those routes are generated.
Perfect. That's great, Safina. And I can see that Dean has asked around, are you aware of any kind of heat maps for the air quality monitoring, well, for the King's air quality monitoring network? Are there any heat maps that potentially show the areas that those monitors can kind of pick up the air quality data from, if that makes sense, if I've translated that correctly to you? But
okay.
I
so,
think, no, carry on.
Sorry, I was going to say, so not exactly, but then if you go to the LAQN website and you enter your postcode, what you can see is something like a heat map in terms of the distribution of pollution across the city and within the specific area that you might enter, if that makes sense. I don't know whether it's worth risking sharing my screen to show you what I mean, but we will share a link to the LAQN website, and then you can see that way exactly how that information is displayed for our information.
Absolutely, thank you, Safina. And yeah, there is the Breathe London network as well. That's a little bit more hyper-local in terms of showing you where the air quality is, and yeah, similar kind of monitoring techniques can be used to make them a little bit more at a hyper-local level then, if they're calibrated correctly and so on. But yes, we can pick that up with you again, Dean, to give you a little bit more of a clear answer on that. Great. So how are we looking for time? 53. Let's then have a look to see whether we can maybe have a little discussion then from all the speakers on one comment, and we can see what everyone's thoughts are on it. So with obviously given the COVID crisis, what advice would you give to local authorities, bids and businesses to help strike the balance between economic and environmental recovery? So are we at risk of potentially going full pelt at the economic side of things and putting the environment on the back burner? So let's see what your advice is on that. Could we potentially start with Fiona? We'll go in reverse order of who presented.
Yep, sure. So I personally think what the advice I would give is actually to find that evidence base in terms of where the two actually can really help to supplement each other. So for example, we know that having had this pandemic, that local is becoming much more important, and actually areas that have open space and more space for people to walk and actively travel also have links in terms of business recovery. And for example, that's why there've been a lot more we know that there's been a lot more interest in parklets for businesses, for example, to try and encourage more footfall and to have more outdoor space to encourage business recovery. So I think my advice would be to, although we need to, in terms of prioritizing, it's actually finding the links between the two in terms of environmental impacts that also have economic benefits, and having an evidence base to support kind of that green recovery. That would probably be my advice.
Great, thank you, Fiona. Let's move over then to Safina.
Okay, yeah, that's a hard question. So I think that that London is going the right way with the Streetscape program and creating really just more space and making it easier for active travel, and with more people out and about. I think it's a great opportunity for small and local businesses to strengthen strengthen within the various communities to, first of all, sort of strengthen the services that they offer by what's called by apologies, I'm a little tongue-tied today. By cooperating with each other, identifying where the services complement each other, and then putting that information out there for the general public. And so the idea is that by creating sort of by strengthening that network and putting that information out there, people who are walking and cycling in the area become more aware of what's out there for them. And so ideally that sort of will encourage the shift away from using vehicles and more active travel, while at the same time also creating a stronger customer base for smaller businesses.
Great, thank you, Savina. And then very quickly then to Kate and Susanna, maybe 20 seconds each. Can you give us a brief comment just on that question, and then we'll wrap things up?
Sure. Okay, not a lot of time. Obviously, we've seen cyclists and pedestrians reclaim central London during lockdown, and we've seen local authorities react really quickly in making changes to our streetscape, so we know what's possible. Maybe I'm optimistic, but I don't really see any reason why economic recovery and the environment can't all work together. If businesses don't adapt now, then they're potentially going to fail, and I just hope that all of this shake-up will lead to great innovation. And yeah, I think that it's totally possible.
Perfect, thanks, Kate. And over to you, Susanna.
Yeah, to echo what all of my colleagues have said, I think we have a brilliant opportunity now to be really bold in what we're asking for and to make permanent many of the current temporary measures that are being put in place. So my parting word would be to be bold. Great,
thank you, Susanna. And just before we then head over to Adam Webber, who will give a quick update and wrap things up, just like to point you in the direction that Fiona's already mentioned, our next live share session. This is aimed at businesses, business improvement districts, local authorities, all to come and listen to experts from across the industry in sustainability and sustainable travel. Our next one will be Ditch Diesel, your electric vehicle options explained. The link has been posted in the chat already. It's the same time as today, so 2 p.m, and it's on Thursday, so please do join us if you can. And all of our contact details are on the screen here if you want to get in contact with us about anything that you've seen today, and also do feel free to follow us on social media and sign up to our newsletter. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to Westminster for inviting us to speak today.
Thanks, Thomas. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If just before you all leave, if I can very quickly just thank Susanna, Thomas, and everyone else from Cross River Partnership for such an interesting overview of all the work they're doing. We've worked with Cross River Partnership as friends and colleagues for a great number of years, and will continue to do so for a great many more years to come, I imagine. I just wanted to very quickly, before everyone leaves and goes about the rest of their Tuesday, just give a tiny bit of context to everyone and let everyone know about the next seminar or webinar that we're going to be doing around the council's work about the climate emergency. So obviously, I was thinking about the questions that were being asked, and the last point being around economic recovery and the environment. And obviously, I think the answer from a corporate point of view and from a council point of view is that we want to try and combine the two. Climate emergency and a green recovery is a real priority for the leader, for Stuart, for SLT. And really, we're thinking about how we can deliver all kinds of co-benefits by framing all the renewal and recovery work that we're doing in terms of reopening Westminster back up through a kind of environmental perspective. I think it's been really clear from the Cross River Partnership people, that speakers that we've had today, about how agile we can be and how innovative we can be in adapting existing programmes and projects, and also about thinking about completely new things we can be doing. So obviously Westminster's declared a climate emergency. That means that we're aiming to be a carbon neutral council by 2030 and become a carbon neutral city by 2040. So work's going along to do that across a number of different areas, from EV charging points to the school's clean air fund to waste and recycling, and importantly, in terms of the recovery work, the temporary spaces for cyclists and pedestrians and how we can think about we might make those a bit more permanent. I just wanted to kind of say that we're creating a climate emergency action plan, which segues neatly into the final thing that I just wanted to say, in that we're going to have another webinar on this, on the council's emissions data, our baselining and our climate emergency action plan. That's going to take place in September, date TBC, but it will be published on The Wire and all kinds of other internal comms. So keep an eye out on that, because there is, as we've seen today, just from the great work Cross River Partnership are doing, there's a massive amount of work going on across the climate emergency, across air quality and across the renewal work to really ensure that we have a green recovery from COVID. So again, thank you all for coming again today. Sorry, I've gone slightly over time there, but thanks all for coming. Thanks again to our friends at CRP. And unless Thomas or any of the CRP folks have anything else to say, enjoy your Tuesdays, and thanks for coming.